Wait, that has a history? You use it every day. You've never thought about it, and somehow it changed the world. I'm Robbie, and this is Wait, That Has a History? The podcast uncovering the wild, weird, and totally unexpected stories behind everyday things. Because nothing you use is as ordinary as it looks. Just 5 more minutes. We all know that sound. It is the universal anthem of I don't want to do this today. It's the alarm clock, the device we love to hate, the little plastic tyrant that dictates the start of our lives. But before you curse your phone tomorrow morning, I want you to imagine a different wake-up call. Imagine, instead of a beep, you're woken up by the sound of a mechanical puppet beating a drum. Or maybe a whistle caused by a sudden rush of water. Or, stranger yet, a person standing on the sidewalk shooting dried peas at your bedroom window. Because before we have the snooze button, we had some very strange ways of waking up. Today, the strange origins of the alarm clock. Our journey begins not in a bedroom, but in ancient Greece, specifically with the philosopher Plato. You know him for the allegory of the cave, but he also apparently had a serious problem getting out of bed for his dawn lectures. Around the 4th century BCE, Plato invented what is arguably the first alarm clock, but it didn't use gears or batteries. It used water. It was a large water clock, or clepsydra. Water would drip from one vessel into another overnight. As the second vessel filled, it trapped air inside. When the water level hit a critical point, right when Plato needed to wake up, the trapped air was forced out through a siphon into a whistle. Imagine a tea kettle screaming at you from the corner of the room. That was the sound of philosophy waking up. But the Greeks weren't the only ones getting creative. Let's jump forward to 725 AD in China. A Buddhist monk and mathematician named Yi Xing built a clock that makes your Apple Watch look boring. It was a massive astronomical instrument powered by water, but it wasn't just for looking at the stars. It had a mechanism that would trigger a puppet to strike a gong at certain hours. So for centuries, if you were rich or powerful, you could be woken up by elaborate hydraulics. But what if you were a regular person, a farmer, a factory worker? Well, for a long time, you relied on the bladder alarm. I'm serious. Indigenous tribes and early farmers would drink a specific amount of water before bed, knowing that biology would force them up before sunrise. It was risky, but eco-friendly. But then came the Industrial Revolution. Factories didn't care about the sun, and they certainly didn't care about your bladder. They ran on shifts. Being late meant losing your job. Since mechanical clocks were still too expensive for the working class, a new profession emerged in Britain and Ireland. They were called the knocker-uppers. A knocker-upper was a human alarm clock. You paid them a few pence a week, and they would walk the streets in the dark, cold morning to wake you up. But they couldn't just bang on the front door. That would wake the neighbors who hadn't paid. They had to be precise. Many carried long bamboo poles, sometimes called fishing rods, with a wire hook at the end to tap on second-story bedroom windows. And my personal favorite method, the pea shooter. Some knocker-uppers carried hollow reeds and a mouthful of dried peas. They would snipe the glass of your window until they saw you move. There's actually a famous tongue twister from this era about the problem of who wakes up the person who wakes everyone else up. It goes, we had a knocker-upper, and our knocker-upper had a knocker-upper, and our knocker-upper's knocker-upper didn't knock our knocker-upper up. Try saying that 3 times fast before your coffee. Eventually, we needed something more reliable than a guy with a stick. We needed a machine. Enter Levi Hutchins. He was a clockmaker in Concord, New Hampshire in the year 1787. Levi was a creature of habit. He wanted to wake up at 4 a.m. every single day. So he invented the first American mechanical alarm clock. It was a wooden cabinet with a bell that rang when the hour hand hit a certain gear. It worked perfectly, but there was a catch, a massive, glaring flaw.
Levi Hutchins never patented his invention, and more importantly, he never made it adjustable. The clock rang at 4 a.m. That's it. If you wanted to wake up at 5 a.m., too bad. 6 a.m., buy a rooster. Levi built the clock for himself, and he apparently assumed 4 a.m. was the only time worth waking up. It wasn't until 60 years later, in 1847, that a French inventor named Antoine Redier finally patented an adjustable mechanical alarm clock. Finally, we could choose our own suffering. Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the feature we abuse the most, the snooze. The snooze button didn't arrive until 1956, introduced by General Electric. And here is a piece of trivia you can use at your next dinner party. Have you ever noticed that on old digital clocks and even on the iPhone, the default snooze time is 9 minutes? Why not 10? Why not a clean 5? It's because of the gears. In the original 1956 mechanical design, the gear teeth for the snooze function had to mesh with the existing clock gears. Setting it to exactly 10 minutes was physically impossible with the spacing. It would have required a complex redesign. They could do a little over 9 minutes or a little over 10 minutes. They chose 9 minutes because they felt 10 minutes might be too long, allowing people to fall back into a deep sleep. So, if you feel groggy after hitting snooze, blame the gear ratios of 1956. From whistling tea kettles to pea shooters, and from 4 a.m. wake-up calls to the 9-minute snooze, the history of the alarm clock is really just the history of us trying to battle our own biology. So tomorrow morning, when that alarm goes off, don't throw your phone across the room. Just be thankful there isn't a guy standing outside your window shooting dried peas at your face. Thanks for listening to Wait, That Had a History.
That's the story behind today's everyday thing. If you liked it, subscribe or follow. Share it with a friend and leave a like or review. It helps more than you think. Because even the smallest things have a past.